You know this feeling. Not the phone. You. That morning when you opened your eyes and something was already gone. Before the alarm. Before the first thought. Before the day even had a shape. You were already at 1%. Not tired in the way that sleep fixes. Not stressed in the way that a weekend fixes. Something deeper. Something that felt like the version of you that shows up for things. The version that cares, that tries, that pushes, had quietly left the building sometime in the night. And you lay there wondering if it was coming back. Most people call this burnout. Some call it depression. Some call it getting older. The neuroscience calls it something specific. And what it calls it changes everything about why it happens, how long it lasts, and most importantly, what you've been doing wrong every time you've tried to fix it. There's a researcher at the University of Michigan who has spent 19 years studying exactly this state. She doesn't call it burnout. She doesn't call it fatigue. She calls it neural resource depletion. And what she found, in a study that almost didn't get published because the implications were too uncomfortable for the institutions funding it, is that the 1% feeling is not a warning sign. It's a message, a specific one. And it's been trying to reach you for longer than you think. We'll get to her. But first, you need to understand what's actually running out. Your brain consumes more energy than any other organ in your body. It weighs about 3 pounds. It represents roughly 2% of your total body mass. And at rest, doing nothing, just existing, it consumes approximately 20% of your total caloric energy. When you're under sustained cognitive or emotional load, that number climbs. But here's what most people don't know. The brain doesn't run on a single energy system. It runs on several, and they deplete at different rates. For different reasons. In response to different demands, the one that runs out first is not the one you'd expect. Researchers at the National Institute of Mental Health have identified what they call the prefrontal energy budget, the specific metabolic resources available to the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, impulse control, and the maintenance of long-term goals. The prefrontal cortex is the most recently evolved part of the human brain. It's also the most metabolically expensive to run. And it has a daily budget, not a metaphorical budget, a measurable one. Studies using neuroimaging have documented the actual depletion of prefrontal metabolic resources across a single day of sustained, cognitive, and emotional demand. By the end of a high-demand day, prefrontal activity in study participants had dropped by measurable percentages, enough to produce documented changes in decision quality, emotional reactivity, and the ability to maintain perspective on things that would normally feel manageable. You've felt this. The way a conversation that would be fine at 10 a.m. becomes an argument at 9 p.m., the way a problem that has a solution in the morning seems to have no solution at night. The way the future, which looked navigable at the start of the week, looks like a wall by Thursday afternoon. That's not pessimism. That's not weakness. That's a prefrontal cortex running on a budget it blew through before lunch. But here's the thing about the 1% feeling, the deep one, the one that doesn't fix with sleep. That's not the prefrontal energy budget. That's something older, something that runs underneath. In 2007, a psychologist named Christina Maslach, who had spent 30 years studying workplace exhaustion, published a paper that quietly reframed the entire conversation about burnout. Maslach had developed what became the most widely used burnout assessment tool in the world, the Maslach Burnout Inventory. For decades, burnout had been defined primarily as exhaustion. Too much demand, not enough recovery. Her 2007 paper argued that exhaustion was only one dimension. The deeper and more damaging dimension was something she called depersonalization. Depersonalization, in Maslach's framework, is the point at which a person begins to feel psychologically detached from their own life. Not sad about it, not angry about it, detached from it. The things that used to feel like yours, your work, your relationships, your sense of purpose, begin to feel like things you're observing from a slight distance. You go through the motions, you produce the outputs, but something in the experience of doing it has gone quiet. If you've felt this, you know exactly what that quiet feels like. Maslach found that exhaustion was recoverable with rest. Depersonalization was not. Once the detachment set in, rest didn't fix it. Time off didn't fix it. Vacation didn't fix it. Because what was depleted wasn't energy, it was meaning. And meaning, the neuroscience is now very clear on this, is not a feeling. It's a neurological resource, one that is generated by specific conditions and destroyed by specific ones. This is what the researcher at the University of Michigan found, and this is the part that nobody tells you. Dr. Sarah Donohue began her research in 2004. She was not studying burnout. She was studying what she called the neuroscience of purpose, the specific brain states associated with the experience of meaningful engagement. She used fMRI imaging to map brain activity during tasks that participants rated as highly meaningful versus tasks they rated as merely necessary. The difference was not in the prefrontal cortex, it was in a deeper structure, the ventral striatum and the anterior cingulate cortex, regions associated with reward processing, motivation, and the integration of emotion with decision-making. Meaningful engagement lit these regions up. Not slightly, significantly, with patterns that looked, in the imaging, almost identical to the patterns produced by deep social connection, the feeling of being genuinely seen by another person. Meaningless engagement, tasks completed out of obligation, habit, or fear, showed suppressed activity in these same regions. Sustained over time, the suppression became baseline. The regions stopped expecting activation. They went quiet. And here is the finding that almost didn't get published. Dr. Donohue's study found that the primary driver of this suppression was not overwork. It was not long hours. It was not high demand. It was repetition without choice, specifically doing the same things, in the same way, with no sense that the choice to do them belonged to you. Participants who worked long hours on projects they had chosen, projects that aligned with something they genuinely cared about, showed no significant suppression of the ventral striatum over time. Participants who worked moderate hours on tasks assigned to them, with no input into how or why, showed measurable suppression within weeks. The brain doesn't deplete meaning because you do too much. It depletes meaning because you do too much of what wasn't yours to begin with. Sit with that for a moment. Because if that's true, and the imaging data says it is, then the way most people try to fix the 1% feeling is exactly wrong. Here's what most people do when they hit 1%. They rest. They take a break. They reduce input and wait for the energy to return. And sometimes it does. For a while. But if the depletion is in the meaning system, if what's actually empty is the ventral striatum's expectation of reward from engagement, then rest doesn't refill it. You come back from the vacation. You feel temporarily better. And then, within 2 to 3 weeks, the same quiet returns. The same distance. The same going through the motions feeling. Because you rested the prefrontal cortex, you didn't restore the meaning system. Dr. Donohue's research identified 3 specific conditions that restore ventral striatum activity in depleted participants. Not rest, not reduced demand. 3 conditions. The first, novelty with agency. Doing something genuinely new, not new as in assigned, but new as in chosen. Something you decided to try because some part of you wanted to find out what it was like. The brain's reward architecture responds to voluntary exploration in a way it doesn't respond to mandated change. The second, completion. Finishing something. Specifically, finishing something small enough to actually finish. The meaning system is not restored by working on large, ongoing, never-quite-done projects, even meaningful ones. It's restored by the experience of completion. The closed loop. The thing that is done. Most people who are running at 1% are surrounded by open loops, projects unfinished, conversations unresolved, goals that have been in progress for so long they've stopped feeling like goals and started feeling like weather. The brain's reward system needs closure the way the body needs exhaling. You can inhale for a long time. Eventually, the only thing that matters is the out. And the third condition, the one that surprised Donahue more than the other two. Witness. Being seen doing something that matters to you, by someone whose attention you value. Not praised, not evaluated. Witnessed. The imaging data showed that the simple presence of a trusted observer, someone watching a participant engage in a chosen, meaningful activity with genuine attention, produced ventral striatum activation comparable to the activity itself. You are a social species at a neurological level that goes deeper than most people understand. The meaning system is not a solo operation. It requires, at some biological frequency, the experience of being present in the world in a way that another person registers. Without that, over time, under sustained demand, in the quiet of a life lived mostly inside your own head, the system goes dark, and you wake up at 1%. Here's the part of this that stays with me. The 1% feeling is not a malfunction. It's a signal, the most honest signal your brain knows how to send. It's saying, something about the life you're running is not yours. Not all of it, maybe not most of it, but enough that the system that generates the experience of mattering, the system that makes engagement feel like something rather than nothing, has stopped expecting to be fed. It's not asking you to quit your job. It's not asking you to burn everything down. It's asking you one question. What did you choose today? Not what did you complete. Not what did you produce. Not what did you get done. What did you choose freely for reasons that belong to you, and then do? Because the answer to that question, accumulated across days and weeks and months, is what the meaning system runs on. And if the answer is nothing, if every day is a sequence of obligations, expectations, and necessities with no moment of genuine voluntary engagement, then the 1% feeling isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that the system is working exactly as designed. It's conserving what's left, waiting for you to give it something to spend it on. You know this feeling. That morning when you opened your eyes and something was already gone. Now you know what was gone. And you know, more precisely than you did before, what it actually takes to get it back. Not more rest, not less demand. One chosen thing, one finished thing. One moment of being genuinely present in front of someone who sees you. That's the minimum. That's where the needle starts to move. The question is, what do you do with that, starting tomorrow morning, before the day takes the choice away from you? If this is the kind of content that makes you think differently about your own life, subscribe for new videos. There's more where this came from, and the next one goes even deeper into something we touched on today.